A clever way of applying filters to your pivot tables, other than using the report filter option in the top of a pivot table here, is to use the data slicer. So let's take the employee's large pivot and look at adding a data slicing option. Now this is done through the Analyze sub-ribbon of the pivot table tools ribbon, and we have Insert Slicer. Now what the slicer will do is allow you to choose any of the fields in your underlying data, that's why I have such a list here, and then use that as a filter for your pivot table. So if I were to take the marital status, for example, okay, I get a little slicer for all the marital status. Now I can resize this box, it doesn't have to be that big, and I can move it about, so I can place it over here. Now at the moment, this data slicer is not filtering my pivot table. If I were to click on Sin, then it would just filter out the single people. So this pivot table is now the single people. Div, divorced, and Mar for married. So it's effectively applying a top level filter. I can multiple select values in here by using Control click. So I've got Mar and Div, or I've got Sin and blank, or I've got Sin, blank, and Div. And the pivot table responds immediately. So it's a nice quick way of having a higher level filter. Now it doesn't have to be using fields that aren't in the data. You could use one that is, and I can have more than one slicer. So I could leave that marital status one there, go back to the Analyze and add another slice, and let's add one that's based on the department. Okay. Now the beauty of adding the department one in, if I move across to here, is I can instantly see that this is working. Now you'll notice that accounts and finance are, I was going to say grayed out, but they're light blued out. The reason for that is that we have the marital options missing, so let's add those back on and add the blank back on, and then that way we get all our departments back. Now if I just want to see accounts, I can choose accounts, and you can see then I just have accounts, and the only person in accounts lives in Northallerton. Let's do clerical, and we get a bigger expanse, or just like the marital status, I can Control click. So I could have sales, personnel, and clerical. So we can see with our slicers open, let's resize that slightly. Once they're resized big enough not to see any more data, the scroll bar disappears, so you know it's big enough. And they work together. So I could change that to div, and it's now div, clerical, sales. Personnel being light blued out means there are no divorced people in personnel. Or I could go back to married, clerical, personal, sales, or I could go back to sin, clerical, personal, sales. So these data slices are effectively filtering the data before it gets to the pivot table. Is probably the best way of looking at it. And then we only see the data in the pivot table that matches our higher level filters. And you can have as many of these slices as you like. Obviously, the larger the screen resolution, the better, because you can put them where you want them. And should you wish to remove all the filtering that a slice is applying, you just click the little cross there. And that way we see all the marital status. And that little cross there brings back all the departments. You can format your data slices. They don't need to be blue. With the data slice selected, you'll see you have Slicer Tools options, where we can control the size over here and the width. And we can also control the colors. Lots of color choices to choose from. Go for dark blue, I could go for red. I could go for orange. Notice it only affects the slice that I've chosen. So this slicer could actually be a different color. That could be green. Or if I wanted to be controlling, I could go for a new slicer style, set up my own color scheme, and that would then apply to my slices. Now, if you have multiple slices on the sheet, so we have the marital status and department, I can move them about, but notice how the marital status has gone behind the department because the department slice was added after the marital status one. So the order they're added controls their stacking order, which is really where these bits then come to play, because I can then pull this particular slice forward and it becomes in front of the department. So should you have so many slices they need to overlap each other, you can then control which one sits in front of which other one by using the bring forward or bring to front option, or send backward, send to back option. So I could send the marital status back to the back, and it then goes behind the department. The original stacking order is controlled by the order they are added. So I could add another one, clicking into pivot table, analyze, insert a slicer, and let's have a sex, which is just a 1 and a 2, so I can make that one a lot smaller. And this one's added the most recent, so it will go over the top of the other two. Again, I could send it backward, so it goes behind the department. Send backward again, goes behind the marital status. And if I don't move it, I'm not going to be able to see it. But it too can be coloured in. Let's go for purple. And as you choose either of the options, they are then applied. So that's now only showing male employees. That shows female employees. So we could have female. Let's move that out a little. Divorced. And we can see that they only work in operations and warehousing. The other options being grayed out to some degree. So that's the data slicer. For slicing your data, instead of using the report filter option, we can have these beautiful slices that can be color coded, and they just make it a bit more user friendly to use and filter your pivot table data.